May is returning to Britain with a fistful of trade deals and talking up the UK's prospects outside the European Union. But her trade tour of China has been overshadowed by noises off from her own MPs here in Westminster and demands that she provides more clarity on the UK's negotiating position as the second stage of Brexit talks begin. Just before she boarded a plane in Shanghai, she spoke to the BBC's political editor, Laura Kunsberg, who asked her whether it was time to fill in the blanks on what she really wanted from Brexit.
We're now starting to negotiate that free trade agreement with the European Union. We want that to enable trade to take place on as frictionless and tariff-free a basis as possible across our borders. But of course we also want to be signing trade deals around the rest of the world, like here in China.
Prime Minister, there's a fundamental choice though here, isn't there? Your Chancellor has said he believes the changes might be very modest. One of your former Brexit ministers, who's on your side, has said the government is yet to make clear choices, and you're risking ending up with something that looks like meaningless waffle. There are big choices here that you haven't yet made, or you're not willing to tell us.
The negotiations with the European Union are in two phases. We completed
the
first phase.
Second phase
We've
now,
just
and
entered.
time is running out.
We've just entered the second phase. If you look back to what happened in the first phase, many people said we wouldn't get the deal. Many people said we wouldn't be able to come to an agreement with the EU, and many people said we wouldn't get what we wanted.
And now we move on, and what people want to know,
Laura, but the point is
that
that deal, which many people said would not be done, was done. We got what we wanted. We ensured that we dealt with those issues in that first phase. Now we start the negotiations for the second phase. We want that free trade agreement. We negotiate a free trade agreement with the European Union. We want that to be on as tariff-free and frictionless a basis as possible. That will be good for jobs in the UK, but that also gives us the freedom to be able to negotiate and to sign up trade deals around the rest of the world. And that's good for prosperity and jobs and people in Britain too.
Prime Minister, you know very well, though, that the decision time is fast approaching. Now, our viewers can hear when you are reluctant to give any more detail. I ask you again, which is more important to you? Less disruption to the economy or more control for our Parliament and our politicians? Because the EU, many people in business, many members of the public, many people in your party believe you simply can't have both. And you must now come clean on what you really want, or it risks like you look like you don't know what you want.
Well, you see, I don't believe that those are alternatives. What the British people voted for is for us to take back control of our money, our borders and our laws. And that's exactly what we are going to do.
Theresa May. Well, we're joined here by the veteran Conservative Brexiteer, Bill Cash. Welcome to the programme, Bill Cash. Yes. Does Theresa May need to set out her ambition for Brexit more clearly now?
Well, Brexit, she said, means Brexit. We've got the Article 50 Act through, by 499 in the House of Commons. We've also got the withdrawal bill through the House of Commons by a bigger majority on second reading. The negotiations are running parallel to this. It's bound to be difficult. There's no question about that. My European Scrutiny Committee is looking into all the ins and outs of it.
But my question is,
in terms of her and the way in which it's all being conducted, the fact is that, as I've said recently, we need to have what I call a grown-up discussion, knowing that there are serious differences about the end game. But actually, if you look at what the EU wants, they want political union.
Right.
There is no way we could stay in that European Union.
So does Theresa May need to set out what she wants more clearly?
I would like to see more emphasis on what the objectives of the EU are in terms of political union, the fact that they run a system of making laws which we couldn't possibly live with behind closed doors, the democracy that we represent, the terrific opportunities that we have in the global market, of which this China deal is an example.
Are you disappointed that she hasn't said those things?
I'm saying that at the moment we're waiting for her to make a big speech, which I think is coming.
Well, it's not, actually. She's going to deliver a speech on security, but she's not going to deliver a big speech in the way that you have just characterised.
Well, I'm saying that I do think the moment is going to come when we need to get that big vision out there, because I think a lot of people are squabbling amongst one another about what they want, whereas in fact the ultimate objectives in the national interest are clear. We repeal the 72 Act, we get the bill through the House of Lords with possibly some amendments, and the bottom line is that the really big vision is about stopping our being part of a political union. We can't reverse, we can't remain we actually have to get into the serious business of having our own lawmaking, our own borders, our own money.
Right, you've said yourself the party is squabbling. Has Theresa May got a grip of the Conservative Party?
I think there are too many people who are running around at the moment giving an impression, which are really differences of opinion. We hear it in the tea room, we hear it elsewhere. But the reality is that actually, when it comes to the votes rather than the arguments, the votes are going through.
But you say these are differences of opinion. I mean, it's more than differences of opinion. I mean, tempers are flying left, right and centre. I mean, there is a daily outpouring of Tory MPs basically criticising the opposite side when it comes to Brexit, and not just on Brexit. Even your colleague, Jacob Rees-Mogg, is basically accusing the civil service of not actually, or betraying what Brexit was all about, even though the government has tasked the civil service with finding out what they should be doing. Is that correct?
If we look, for example, at what happened over Project Fear, I distinctly remember how the information process was begun. Wait a minute, and it is this, that it was agreed that it would be completely impartial, and it certainly was not. That's what I'm saying. There is a kind of status quo, institutionalised attitude within parts of the civil service, and in a way you can hardly quite blame them for this reason, that actually they've grown up with this. When you heard Robin Butler, who was Secretary of the Cabinet, saying that the repeal of the 1972 Act was a dagger in my soul, that is the kind of thing.
Come on, wait. The civil servants, if they had a clear steer, would be prosecuting that steer. The problem is
they have
nobody
got a clear
will tell
steer.
them what to
Zoe,
do.
I'm terribly sorry, but you know, you seem to have missed something. They have got a clear steer.
They don't.
They
you don't
do.
even know whether you want to stay in the customs union or not.
Oh yes, we absolutely do. We're not going to be in the customs union. We're not going to be in the single market.
So what does that make
Zoe,
of the Ireland announcement?
Well, hang on, don't talk over each other.
No.
And then let Zoe respond.
This point. When the council decision was announced 2 or 3 days ago, on which I did an urgent question, the fact is that in that document, it actually prescribes that we would be in the customs union and we'd be in the single market, that we would be subject to the Court of Justice. These are the really big questions. And the fact is the government is saying we will not be in the customs union, we will not be in the single market for one reason, and that is if you repeal the 1972 Act, you've changed the whole nature of the European Union and our relationship.
Harry,
the problem is, and it's perfectly demonstrated here, is there is a complete vacuum at the moment, and people are going to project onto the Prime Minister what they want, and they're going to do it publicly. But the problem for the Prime Minister is she's in a totally catch-22 situation. Because of the election, because of her gamble last year, she's ended up in a situation where there are 15 people on the Remain side of the party, the pro-EU wing, who want a softer Brexit, and there are 35, maybe 40, maybe even 50 on the hard Brexit side who want a pure, clean break with Brussels. Now, either side now, but she at this point, she's got to upset one of those wings.
Right.
And every time she's trying to juggle all these plates for so long that eventually she's got to break the egg.
This makes literally no sense. You're both sitting here and saying we're completely resolved, we're completely leaving the single market, we're completely leaving the customs union. If that were clear, then there wouldn't be a vacuum, would there?
And they wouldn't be squabbling.
Because it's what replaces it. The vacuum is what replaces it.
Well, yeah,
the decision has been made to leave.
Harry's right.
All right, but Bill Cash, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Is Theresa May still the best person in your mind to deliver Brexit?
I believe so, for this reason, that actually we've got a programme, she's following it through, you've got the Lancaster House speech, we are in a transitional period, there are a number of questions
hasn't been agreed yet.
that have yet, exactly. I'm saying that you've made my point.
Right, but
we are in the middle of negotiating what that is going to mean.
Right, but Harry has just said, in a political vacuum, various wings of the party are projecting out to the public what they think Brexit should be, including your good self. Would Brexit be better delivered by someone who voted to leave the EU in the referendum?
Look, she has made an even bigger transition, in a sense, from going from Remain to a situation where she's pursuing a policy, getting the bills that have already gone through.
So would Brexit be better delivered by her or somebody who voted to leave?
My view is that she's doing a very good job in making sure that we deliver the votes in the House of Commons, and that is what matters in relation to
So why the squabbling? So why is there this daily rowing?
Tell me. I'm just simply telling you.
I'm not a member of the Tory party or an MP.
But I'm simply saying to you that there are arguments and they're inevitable because of the fact that we're talking about who governs Britain.
Let's pick up.
Would you be surprised if they weren't going to argue about that?
Well, hang on, but let's pick up on one of those issues. We've talked a bit about the civil service. Brexit colleagues like Jacob Rees-Mogg have been denigrating civil servants who work for your government. And then we had the unedifying spectacle of Steve Baker, a government minister, accusing civil servants of skewing the data to undermine the case for leaving the EU, and then having to apologise to the House because he got it wrong. Let's just have a listen to Steve Baker.
Wrong.
Let's have a listen.
Yesterday, I answered a question based on my honest recollection of a conversation. As I explained yesterday, I considered what I understood to be the suggestion being put to me as implausible because of the long-standing and well-regarded impartiality of the civil service. The audio of that conversation is now available, and I am glad the record stands corrected. In the context of that audio, I accept that I should have corrected or dismissed the premise of my honourable friend's question. I have apologised to Mr Charles Grant, who is an honest and trustworthy man. As I have put on record many times, I have the highest regard for our hard-working civil servants. I'm grateful for this early opportunity to correct the record, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I apologise to the House.
Which bit did he get right, then? You said some of it was true.
Well, I'm saying that, in fact, when he made the apology, that, as far as I'm concerned, draws a line under it. What I'm also saying, however, is that it appeared from what I saw, and I wasn't in the House at the time, but my understanding of it is that he was presented with a question which was based on a degree of hearsay, and I think he misunderstood the nature of the question. That's all I can say.
Right. Do you have any comment to make about the fact that he only apologised once the audio was released?
No, I haven't heard the audio.
Number 10 stood by him.
But
is it right to deliberately accuse the civil service of deliberately drawing up negative assessments for Brexit?
Well, they certainly did during the Project Fair.
This is the problem.
Right. So you do think it's true. Why? So why did he apologise?
No, I didn't say that. I'm talking about the past. I'm not talking about this present
No, but I'm saying
situation.
now, in these recent assessments that were leaked, I mean, Steve Baker basically said until the audio was actually released, which proved him to be wrong, he said the civil service had deliberately drawn... Well, yeah, but how can a minister get it wrong, accusing his own civil servants of deliberately doing something that actually they didn't do?
Well, I think you're putting a bit too much emphasis on the word deliberately. I don't think, from what I saw, that actually he had done it deliberately. I think there was a misunderstanding, and I think that's quite right for him to apologise, but leave it at that.
Brexiteers are now saying openly what they've been saying for privately since the referendum. The wounds are still very raw amongst people like Steve Baker, who is a arch Brexiteer, a very respected Brexiteer on that side of the debate. They still are fighting the battles of the referendum, where they actually were pretty much up against the entire British establishment who wanted Britain to stay in, and that hasn't healed. And then look at it in the context of this week as well. The Brexit department were hit blindsided by this leak on Monday, where Steve Baker didn't even know, it seems, that his own minister, his own boss and the Prime Minister had commissioned this work. And so you can just start to see that sort of conspiracy theory sort of mode come back a little bit.
I mean, how seriously should all this be taken?
Well, what's so maddening about this is that every single time it's like, oh, well, the Remainers are doing this again. The civil service Remainers are doing that. It's exactly what they did during the referendum.
Well, Isn't it legitimate to claim that, though, when there has been a track record?
They won the referendum. If they had a project, they could get on and do it.
What's derailing them?
Wait. What's derailing them is not having a project. And when they're derailed by their own lack of a project, they turn around and say, "Oh, the Remainers are still
right." Well, hang on.
Don't.
Well, hang on, Bill. There is a legitimate claim to be made about the civil service.
No, I'm simply saying that when we look at the past, there is no doubt. If you look at The Price of Victory, a book written by Michael Charlton for the BBC, all those years ago, I've read it recently. There is absolutely no doubt when you read the recorded interviews of people like Con O'Neill, Eric Roll and all the others, you will see that they had an attitude of mind. They wanted a certain objective.
Right. The one thing, Bernard Jenkin, your colleague, was on the programme a few days ago, or the end of last week, and said that if, in the end, there is drift towards a softer Brexit, as he said, and the government does contemplate and go ahead with remaining in a customs union of some sort with the European Union, that there would be ructions, he said, in the country, and it would be an existential question for the Tory party. Do you agree?
I certainly think there are very serious questions inherent in the distinction, as I would put it, between, as I said to Mel Stride in the big debate on this the other day, between being in the customs union and a customs union. And what a customs union means is something yet to be resolved.
But what he's saying is if that happens, what will happen to...
Well, if we were to stay in the customs union indefinitely, of course there'd be a massive row, but that's not what is happening.
But it looks very like, to be honest, the suggestion on the table is we leave all these unions and then we create something as much like them as possible and then we join those at gargantuan expense and a huge waste of time.
I couldn't disagree more.
We'll leave it there. Bill Cash, thank you.